Hello, and welcome back. This is part 3 of the tips for filing a VA claim, and this particular segment will cover the benefits of therapy. And I don't know how many of you remember Ron Artest, who is now known as Meta World Peace, post-championship interview. And so when the Lakers won, visually in my mind, I was right there with Ron. I was hanging on his coattails. We navigated through the crowd together. He was grinning, I was grinning. And then the reporter stopped us for an interview, right? And the first thing Ron did, Ron thanked his hood. And I was like, okay, Ron, I'm with you, boo. Okay, I probably would do the same, I thank my hood. And then Ron thanked his psychiatrist. And I let go of his coattails because I thought, who acknowledges their psychiatrist on national television? I was like, go get somebody. Go get Ron. You know something ain't right with him. But that was before I started to receive therapy for PTSD. Now, I completely understand why Ron acknowledged his psychiatrist in that interview. I totally get it. So shout out to you, Meta World Peace. I'm with you. I get it. Okay, so let's move forward. First, I think one of the major benefits of receiving therapy was it allowed me to live with myself. I struggled after my trauma for several different reasons, but my biggest obstacle, I could not figure out how someone as strong as me, at least that's how I perceive myself to be, could not sense the danger. And then once I realized that I was in danger, I could not live with myself for my failure to react. Right? I'm supposed to have my act together, but I froze. And through therapy, I learned that the body has different responses to danger. Some fight, some flight, they flee, and some freeze. And the person doesn't have any control of how their body reacts to danger. And so my body chose to freeze. And I was able to kind of live with that once I learned that I absolutely did sense the danger. I got it. I froze. My body chose to freeze. And I had no control over it. And so with that, I was able to let go of a little bit of guilt. Also, it bothered me. Oh my gosh, another huge obstacle. I could not remember every detail of my trauma. And it lasted for hours. I remember darkness. I remember daylight setting in. I remember some of the things that occurred that were horrific, but at some point, I must have blacked out. And I beat myself up for that. How can I not remember? We're supposed to be detail-oriented people. We're supposed to be the pillar of strength. And here I am in my own situation. I cannot recall everything that occurred over the course of hours. And that really bothered me. I had little snippets of things that let me know that my body was very aware that I was in distress, but I can't account for hours. I can't. And I'll give you an example. after a certain point, like I said, I won't elaborate too much on the trauma for several personal reasons. You pick one, and I'm sure that's it. But I struggled. I remember wanting to go to the bathroom really bad, like this intense desire to use the restroom, but knowing that I couldn't go, that I didn't have permission to go, that was not an option for me. And I still don't know over the course of that time if I ever went to the restroom, or maybe my body shut down and I no longer had to go. I cannot remember that. But like I said, through therapy, I learned that my inability to remember is a defense mechanism. And my brain won't give me more than I can handle. And I'm okay with realizing that there are parts to that trauma that I'll never be able to remember. And that my body and my mind collectively, they don't want me to remember. And that's okay. Also, I think one of the major benefits of therapy is it helps you to see just how much you're swimming in dysfunction. Because for me, I didn't know. I simply did not know how bad off I was. Don't get me wrong. I knew that I wasn't the same. I started to have sleep disturbances, night terrors, night tremors, and I would wake up with the inability to breathe, and I would be gasping for breath, and I would, try to raise my hands over my head, open up my lungs, and I found myself, sometimes I would just run out of the door while I was struggling to breathe because I thought maybe someone would find me outside versus being inside. And so I had reached a point to where I just did not want to go to sleep. I was paranoid to go to sleep. I thought that I might die in my sleep. Like maybe one time, while I'm sleeping, I won't be able to regain my breath. And so there was a huge sense of paranoia associated with me going to sleep. And through therapy, I started to attend cognitive behavior classes for insomnia. And so that helped me to learn, and that coupled with individual therapy helped me to learn different ways to wind down before going to sleep to help me relax. And so that was beneficial. I still struggle, but not as bad as before. Before, I think the lack of sleep and just the overall starting to break down and unravel contributed to my forgetfulness because I was extremely forgetful. I would attach my keys to this long lanyard and affix the lanyard to this bag, this huge bag that I would carry around. And in that bag would contain the papers and different things that I needed throughout the day or throughout the week. The problem was I would misplace the bag. And so through therapy, I learned that I was suffering from the symptoms of PTSD, whereas before I thought I was in the beginning stages of dementia, which also added to my fear. And that was very helpful for me to learn that what I was experiencing was common and that I could understand kind of how my body was reacting and responding to my trauma. So in the beginning, I refused to partake in PTSD training with other male veterans. I just simply wouldn't do it. I did not want the energy. I had a fear of, because I did not have combat um, experience, that I would somehow be frowned upon in a therapy session. But I also realized through therapy that a lot of that was my feeling of unworthiness, my feeling that I wasn't worthy enough to be amongst the combat vets. And I got over that, and I did eventually attend training with other males in group therapy. And guess what? Not all of the males had been to combat either. And there were also other MST survivors who were male. So don't let that be your reason for not seeking group therapy, because they were experiencing their own traumas. And I don't even think they had the time to look at me in any type of way. They were too busy, like the rest of us, just struggling to stay afloat. But I'll give you an example of why I was also hesitant. So the VA had referred me to a civilian dentist. And, you know, you arrive at the dentist for your appointment, you fill out the medical questionnaire, and so they call you in the back, and I'm in the back, and the dentist walks in, and the dentist, of course, is reviewing my chart, and he is a former officer in the military. And so as he reviews my chart, he's like, okay, so the VA referred you here? Yes. Okay, so you suffer from PTSD? Yes. So where did you serve in combat? Guess what I said? In the United States. And he sat there and he was perplexed. And he kept saying, you served combat in the United States? I said, yes, sir. I served combat right here in the good old USA. It was one-on-one combat in a more intimate setting. My PTSD stems from military sexual trauma. And I let that resonate. And I tell you what, he won't do that again. But that's just an example. And I don't hold anything against him personally. It's just that most people associate veterans who have PTSD to be combat veterans. And that's not always the case. So hopefully I enlighten him. And I definitely got over that guilt. And so also, therapy helped me to understand how I was being perceived by others and just how emotionally disconnected I was. I just didn't know. I didn't connect the dots. I'm telling you, I had no idea I was as bad off as I was. I just didn't know. And I'll give you an example of how I started to become enlightened. The first was my father's funeral. And after the funeral, as we're, heading to the limousine, about to drive over to the cemetery, one of my family members said to me, I was so shocked when you cried. What? Isn't that what you're supposed to do at a funeral? And they weren't being nasty. They were being genuine. They were honestly shocked that I cried at my father's funeral. So that was the first indication that there was some sort of disconnect, emotional disconnect in how I was being perceived by others. I was a wreck in my personal life, but in my career, I strived. And that was because it was an escape for me. I I didn't have to deal with the dysfunction that was in front of me because I threw everything I had into my job. And so because of that, I promoted within the ranks. And they sent me to a leadership course. And in that leadership course, you had to hand out a questionnaire to 7 people. And although you knew the 7 people who you gave the questionnaire to, you didn't know their responses. And so all their responses to these questions about me were computer generated, and then you received it. I think it was on the final day or on one of the days of the conference. One of the questions was, does this person have the courage to lead? My rating was through the roof. They obviously felt I had the courage to lead. I had strength there. The second question was, or one of the questions that stood out to me was, did I have the courage to confront? Oh yeah, I had the courage to confront. The rating for that was through the roof. And then came the gut punch. Does this person have the courage to love? I received 2 points. So that meant to me, either 2 people gave me 1 point out of 7, or 1 person gave me 2 points out of 7, but the others didn't even bother to rate me. And first of all, what is the courage to love anyway? So I got up and I walked over to the instructor and I said, excuse me, with my little paper, excuse me, this says something about the courage to love. And I only received 2 points out of a possible 49. Like, what is that? What is that saying? And he looked at me like, you poor little robot. They're trying to tell you you don't have the courage to be vulnerable, that you're stoic for the most part. Wow. On a side note, when I submitted my claim for disability benefits, I also utilized that information and added it to my packet because it was clear there was a huge disconnect going on, and I had no idea that anyone else could see it but me. Darkness attracts darkness, and I think it provides a level of comfort as well. And so I found myself affixed to a lot of dark situations. And the guilt from that was and is at times still mind-boggling. And therapy helped me come to terms with it, because I had to say to myself, if my leg was severed, right? And I had this stump and it was bleeding profusely. And I had yet to go to the doctor and have it sewn up. I'm still bleeding. My trauma is still unprocessed. I may not have so much the physical pain as the emotional pain. So if I was walking around with this bloody stump and all the trauma associated with that, would I hold myself accountable for decisions that I made under that type of stress, under that type of duress? Probably not. And so I had to equate my emotional trauma with physical trauma just to be able to look at myself in the mirror. And I would not have been able to do that with therapy. Also, people look at us and they think, oh, she's fine. There's nothing really wrong with her. But they don't know. They don't know what you go through. They don't see the bad part. Would you post on social media crying or depressed? I doubt it. You may, but I doubt it. So I had to forgive myself. That was the hardest thing. That was the biggest benefit of therapy. I had to forgive myself. I was harder on myself. I also didn't hold my aggressor. I didn't blame him. I blame myself. Had I not done A, B, C, and D? Had I not put myself in that situation? I'm not saying that I was asking for it, but I gave him no blame whatsoever. Not until after extensive therapy. And then something in me clicked. He's to blame. I don't care, and this is for everyone, and not necessarily my situation, but here's the thing. I don't care what you did. No one has the right to violate you. I don't care what you wore. I don't care if you walked down the street and you had on a pair of shorts. I don't care if you had some cleavage showing. I don't care if you went to a situation that you didn't realize at the time was dangerous, but in retrospect, you realized that it was. No one has the right to violate you. Do you understand me? They don't have the right to violate you. So then I transferred a lot of that energy onto him because he deserved it. And I was allowed to let go of some of those demons that I was holding on to. So I don't want to make this a dreadful post. It looks like I'm already 23 minutes almost into it. But I want to just tell you that there is hope. I think you will always live with it, but you will have coping mechanisms that will give you some peace at times. Some days are worse than others. And even though you may attend training and cognitive behavior therapy courses, you might still be that hamster running in a wheel and find yourself just having the inability to control your situation. But at least you understand why you are acting the way that you are. So, in closing, thank you so much for viewing. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If there's anything else you would like me to discuss, just put it in the comments and maybe I'll make another video. And have a great day.